All right, let's jump right into some of the most crucial and honestly fascinating cases in Philippine family law. Now, these aren't just dry legal disputes. Nope, these are stories. Stories that really shape what it means to be married, to separate, and to be a family under a pretty unique legal system. Everything, and I mean everything we're about to talk about, starts right here, with this single powerful line from the Philippine Constitution. It sets the stage by saying marriage isn't just a private deal between two people. It's a cornerstone of society itself, and the state is going to protect it. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? When a marriage falls apart, the law has to step in, but it doesn't come with easy answers. Instead, what you get is this really complex framework, built piece by piece over decades of court decisions. So, to really get this, we're going to walk through 4 legal pillars that basically hold up the whole institution of marriage in the Philippines. We'll talk about how your passport literally ties you to Philippine law no matter where on earth you are. We're going to find out just how high the bar is for an annulment. Then we'll look at the one and only reason you can get a court to declare a missing spouse legally gone. And finally, we'll zero in on the exact year the rules of the game changed completely. Let's get into it. Okay, our first pillar is something a lot of people don't quite get. For any Filipino citizen, Philippine marriage law is kind of like your shadow. It follows you everywhere you go. This is all thanks to something called the nationality rule. So here's the bottom line. It doesn't matter where you live. If you hold a Philippine passport, you're playing by the rules of Philippine family law. You can't just hop over to another country, get a divorce, and think that's the end of it back home. It just doesn't work that way. And the Lavadia case is the perfect real-world example of this. You had a husband and wife, both Filipinos, they go to the Dominican Republic, get a divorce, and then, thinking he's a single man again, Attorney Luna marries another woman the very same day. That one act kicked off a massive legal battle after his death. The Supreme Court could not have been more clear. Since both of them were Filipino citizens, that foreign divorce decree was basically just a piece of paper with no legal power in the Philippines. That meant marriage number 1 was still on the books, which made marriage number 2 bigamous. And for the second wife, Soledad, that was devastating. It meant her marriage was void from the start, and she had none of the rights of a legal wife. But wait, there's a huge exception, and you really need to pay attention to this. The law recognized it would be bizarre if a foreigner divorced their Filipino spouse, leaving the Filipinos still legally married. So Article 26 was created. If you're a Filipino married to a foreigner, and that foreigner divorces you, then you can go to a Philippine court, have that divorce recognized, and be free to remarry. But the big lesson from Lavadia is that this escape hatch only opens for mixed nationality couples. All right, on to our second pillar. Now, if divorce isn't on the table for two Filipinos, many turn to annulment. And the ground you hear about most is psychological incapacity. But what in the world does that actually mean? It's not just we fight all the time. It's a genuine, deep-seated inability to perform the essential duties of marriage. And trust me, the courts have made it really, really hard to prove. You see, the courts came up with this very strict 3-part test. First, the problem has to be grave. It can't be some minor personality clash. Second, it has to have what lawyers call juridical antecedents, which is a fancy way of saying the condition had to exist at the time of the wedding, even if it was hidden. It can't be something that popped up years later. And third, it has to be incurable, basically permanent. The Lontot Cruz case really drives this point home. The court drew a very sharp line in the sand between a true inability to do your marital duties and simply refusing to do them. One is a deep psychological issue, the other is a choice, and the law only cares about the first one. Just look at all the things the court said were not grounds for psychological incapacity. Your everyday marital stress, being incompatible, having bad habits or character flaws. None of that cuts it. They even shot down the husband's wild claim of selective impotency, saying it wasn't a real incapacity, but just a reaction to their fighting. Moving on to our third pillar. This one deals with a really tragic situation, when a spouse just disappears. Now, you might think you need a court order to declare them dead for all sorts of reasons, but the law is incredibly specific. There's only one reason to go to court for this. So, let's look at the Tadeo Maltias case. A soldier goes missing for decades after being sent to a dangerous area. His wife, Estrelita, eventually goes to court to have him declared presumptively dead. So, why do you think she did it? And this is the detail that decided the entire case. She was completely upfront about it. Her goal wasn't to get remarried, it was to claim his military benefits. This table lays it all out perfectly. Under the family code, you only need to go to court to get a declaration of presumptive death for one reason and one reason only, if you intend to remarry. For anything else, like collecting benefits, you don't file a lawsuit. The law says that after a certain amount of time, the person is presumed dead anyway, so the court just threw her case out.
And that brings us to our fourth and final pillar. This is a story about a specific date that drew a line in the sand for Philippine law. August 3rd, 1988. That's the day the Family Code took effect and completely rewrote the rules for marriages that were void from the start. Check out the timeline in the Castillo case. Leah's first marriage in 1972 was void because there was no marriage license. Then she got married again in 1979. Notice, both of those things happened before 1988. Decades later, in 2003, she finally got a court to officially say that first marriage was void. So the question was her second marriage bigamous? Well, by today's standards, yes, absolutely. But, and this is the key, the court had to apply the law as it was back then. Before the Family Code in 1988, if your marriage was void from the get-go, you didn't need a judge's permission to remarry. But after 1988, that all changed. Now, getting that final court judgment first is mandatory, no exceptions.
So why the huge change? The logic was all about protecting the institution of marriage. Lawmakers didn't want people just deciding for themselves, oh, I think my first marriage was void, so I'll just get married again. They decided that that power should belong only to the courts to stop the whole system from becoming a joke.
So we've walked through these different cases. Let's zoom out. What's the big takeaway here? Well, we've seen how these four powerful legal ideas, these four pillars, work together to build the legal definition of marriage in the Philippines.
Let's run through them one last time. First, the passport principle. Your Filipino citizenship means Philippine law follows you. Second, the psychological standard. Annulment isn't for when you fall out of love. It's for a genuine, pre-existing inability to be a spouse. Third, a declaration for one purpose. You only go to court to declare someone gone if you plan to remarry. And finally, the line in the sand. After 1988, only a judge gets to say your marriage is void before you can start a new one.
You see, when you put them all together, these pillars create this kind of legal fortress around the institution of marriage. And that really leaves us with one big question to think about. As our world keeps changing, will these pillars stand firm forever, or will they eventually have to evolve too?